What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of State Champs Hang Time. This is the High School Hoops podcast presented by BCAM and Hungry Howie's Dough Raiser. Go to bcam.org to become a member. I know right now membership is open for coaches, and it's a very valuable tool to be a part of BCAM. Of course, that's how you vote for Mr. and Miss Basketball. Of course, we have Mr. Basketball announcements just hot off the presses here. We recorded this on Wednesday. I know it airs Thursday, so we'll give you some final thoughts on those guys. Miss Basketball, the candidates were announced last week, and so Dan Young and I from BCAM go over that in our second segment on this particular show. It's kind of like deja vu for us here because we kind of got things going. We had some technical difficulties, so we're just going to have to ramp it all back up again, but that's okay because we can do that. What we want to do first off, of course, is introduce the boys, TJ Kelley, Scott Burnstein, Jeff Dullack. What's up, fellas?
How you doing? It's playoff time.
Yes.
Crunch time, baby.
Yeah.
That's right.
The cream will rise.
There it is.
This is where the pretenders go by the wayside and the contenders zoom to the finish line.
In the words of an old buddy of Scott and mine is Marvin Goodwin, someone's going down.
Someone's going down tonight.
That's right.
No doubt.
It's surviving advanced time and
right.
one and done.
That's
it. You have one bad game, your season's over with, and if you catch fire at the right time, you could be playing at the Breslin.
That's right.
Win or go home. So here we are. We want to preview the boys basketball tournament, which is getting set to kick off. I do want to mention for state champs purposes that Operation Friendship between DEPSA and U-D Jesuit should be an intriguing matchup. We will have highlights of that game on State Champs this Sunday at 9 a.m. on Fox Sports Detroit. So tune in for that. Of course, once we get into next week, we start getting into the playoffs. We'll have try and pick some of the best matchups that are going to be going on all over the state. But we want to talk about Class A to start up. We'll talk about kind of favorites, teams that are hot right now. We'll do it for every class. So let's talk about Class A and right now who's hot and who's not.
Let's see. I mean, you've got the obvious teams, but Skyline's undefeated. They're probably, they've got a tough matchup.
Tough draw, though, right?
Yeah. Let's say this, like Ann Arbor teams, more like rivalry games. While Huron and Pioneer aren't the teams at Skyline, or they haven't been. They both lost to Skyline twice apiece. But Skyline, obviously they're playing well. Clarkston, they're playing well. I mean, their only loss was at the end of December to East English Village.
Let me add a side to what TJ just started to say. I think that you can argue validly both for Clarkston being number one or Skyline being number one in the regular season and as we head into the state tournament. But to me, I'm definitive on going into the state tournament. The defending state champion, Clarkston Wolves, are the front runner. Yeah. And I expect them to be raising a state title banner at the end of the season. I don't necessarily have those same expectations from Skyline. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm not saying they won't do it. But if they don't win a state championship, it's not a disappointing season for Skyline. If Clarkston doesn't win a state championship, to me, this is a year that, Breslin or bust.
Yeah, they were built for back-to-back, no doubt.
And I expect them to have the best chance at winning a state title entering tournament play next week.
Right, and to Scott's point, when Clarkston won the state title last year, it was pretty, I guess it was pretty much everyone said, Clarkston's got to win next year.
It was the coronation.
This was before Thomas Kithier was even in the picture, so that has no bearing on our expectations.
It's like Pershing when they won their Appling's junior year.
Yeah.
You're going to have to come back and do it again.
Yeah. So Thomas Kithier's eligibility plays absolutely no role in this because this was our expectation 12 months ago that Clarkston would be winning it this year. I think a lot of us thought that last year might have been too early for this Clarkston team and that this was the year they were building towards.
And I said it when Kithier got there. I mean, the only difference with Kithier being in the lineup or not being in the lineup is Clarkston in the argument for best team in the country, or are they just in the argument for best team in the state? And with Kithier not being there, maybe you can't argue that they're a top 5 team in the nation, and maybe if he was there, you could argue that. Right. But that's really here nor there. They're still the number one team going into the tournament, in my opinion, in Class A, and have the best chance at winning a championship. So the Kithier thing is really kind of a non-factor, and really was a non-factor from the get-go in terms of the ceiling for this Clarkston.
Yeah.
There's a ton of talented teams in Class A. We know that. We've seen it. We've talked about them all season long here on Hang Time. But it's always about who you get who you draw, especially in the districts. And teams like Hazel Park, you had mentioned before that Hazel Park district is brutal.
Yep.
I mean, we've got teams that are participating there that if weren't in that district could make it all the way to the Breslin.
Right. Renaissance, University of Detroit Jesuit. I mean, Oak Park. You know, even while they're not in that OAA red, you know, they've only have 2 losses. They just came off a strong loss against Flint Beecher. And one thing that Clarkston does have,
they beat Beecher.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Oak Park did
yeah.
beat Beecher by 30, 40 points or something like that. One thing about Clarkston, though, I think that their path is a little bit more difficult than everybody else's path, and they have to play Troy for the 3rd time more than likely. They're more than likely going to have to play Hazel Park for the 3rd time. More than likely going to have to play West Bloomfield unless Orchard Lake St. Mary's can beat West Bloomfield in that district. Or regional, or I think it's a district.
Or Waterford Mott.
Yeah, or Waterford Mott.
They're the champion out of the LVC.
That's right.
They're 17-3 entering the state tournament, and if they can avenge one of their 3 losses this year to Avondale, they'll most likely be on the other side in that district championship, waiting for either Orchard Lake or West Bloomfield.
So, and then you look at with Clarkston. I think to TJ's point, when they get to the Breslin Center, it's going to be one of 5, 6, 7 teams, whether it's a Cass, King, East English, Hazel Park, U-D Jesuit, who was my pick to make it to the Breslin Center. I told Lauren earlier in the week I thought they might win it all. I backed off of that a little bit, but U-D Jesuit's a very deep team right now, and that's a team that, since Jalen Thomas returned, that's one of the best teams in the state. I think if Jalen Thomas was there at the beginning of the year, they might be number 2 or 3 in TJ's Super 10.
And I was talking to Coach Donnelly throughout the Catholic League tournament, and it's interesting because they won their 6th straight Catholic League championship this past weekend, and this year's a little different than the previous 5. This year they were kind of afterthoughts, and I'm guilty as any reporter was in this area that I mean I knew they would be competitive, I knew they would be good, but I didn't think they would be of the caliber where they could make a serious run at a Final Four and a possible state championship. And I think the kind of team that this team has grown into, obviously getting Jalen Thomas back at the break, their big 6'9", 6'10" big fella has been huge. But when you got guys like Daniel Friday, who TJ and I have been pumping up as maybe the most improved player in the state of Michigan, you got a lockdown defender like a James Moss, you got Elijah Collins, the Michigan State-bound football player, Zach Winston, Cassius Winston's baby brother, who's just a marksman,
right? Because
from the outside.
Cassius is doing it so just on point at the next
he's
level.
Shooting almost 55% from 3-point range.
Just within just for the dinner table, he's got to be able to shoot 45, 50%.
This is a team that nobody was
was
talking about,
right?
As opposed to the 4 years that Cassius was there, and even last year. And Coach Donnelly said, this group took that personally, and they said, we didn't build something for one era, or for one block. Just Cassius Winston is here and we're a contender, and Cassius Winston leaves and we're not anymore. And I think the U of D guys have taken that and have played with a chip on their shoulder this whole season.
Well, let me ask you this as we'll end kind of the Class A discussion, move on to some of the others. You've got Jesuit coming out of that district. Do you have Jesuit coming out of that district?
I think that I've got to go with Hazel Park. I think that Hazel Park, they had a party that was like or let's say this, when they lost to Clarkston, I think that they really came together and they said, look, we can't lose like that again. And they've got Clarkston, they play at Clarkston I think on Thursday. So I think that Hazel Park is ready, and while they might not win at Clarkston, I think that they're more than likely going to beat U-D Jesuit, just because they do have a lot of strong guard play and guys like Kyrie Adams and other guys that we've talked about, throughout this podcast. But then you also got to remember Renaissance is in that league, in that district. Right. So I mean, you talk about a super tough district. Yep. I mean, it's only going to get tougher as they wind up going on to regionals and then quarterfinals.
The X factor for Hazel Park is, in my opinion, is the health of David Hearns, kind of their second of the 1-2 punch between him and Carl Bowe, the Ferris State commit. And David Hearns, tweaked an ankle earlier this month and sat out, I believe, a week or two, and has come back the last week or two and just hasn't been 100%. He's probably at about 50 to 75% right now. I saw him last week against West Bloomfield. He was very quiet. I think he only had 6 or 7 points. And if he gets into stride, then Hazel Park has a great chance at making a huge run.
Right.
If he doesn't, I'm not taking them out of the conversation, but
it
you know,
hurts them.
It is it's a chink in their armor if Hearns can't be 100% in tournament play.
We record on Wednesday, show airs on Thursday, so we don't know the outcome of that Hazel Park Clarkston rematch. But you like Hazel Park probably coming out of that district.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I really like what I've seen from them down the stretch. Even with Hearns playing hobbled, they got a really nice win against West Bloomfield, and then came back the next night and got a really nice win over Old Redford. And then they beat Troy earlier this week. So
yeah, no matter what, whoever comes out of that, whether it's one game or two games, you're going to have You're going to be right in the heat of big playoff basketball right off the bat, so it's going to give you a lot of momentum heading into the region.
But if UDJ or Renaissance comes out of that district, I'm not shocked.
I'm
not scratching my head, and I'm not in shock.
Yeah.
All right.
One other bold prediction I want to throw out for Class A that I have, TJ kind of talked me to. I don't know if TJ even thinks it's going to happen, but talking to him kind of convinced me to pick it. Belleville to the Final Four. That's what I'm going with.
Brown,
Gabe Brown, Davion Williams. Those are star power type guys, and I think they're going to upset Skyline in the regional final or the quarterfinal.
I think it would be the quarterfinal. And let's say this: Deshaun Munson went down with an injury. He is the key. He's their pretty much Skyline's only post presence.
Right.
You know, he's their dominating rebounder. He plays so hard at 6'4", 6'5". You know, just gets a lot done with athleticism, size, and toughness. But Skyline will need him to be as healthy as he can. You know, I'm talking about even when they play in the district opener on Monday against Ann Arbor Pioneer, and then. Yeah, but Skyline they're going to be, again, they've got a lot of real tough guard play, and they do remind me of Hazel Park in a lot of ways just because they do have so many guards, and then they have some guys that are really playing tough down in the post.
And don't look past Novi. They've won 11 out of 12.
Novi's
The hottest teams in the state right now. Started off 1-6, but great star power, great guard play, which are both just huge factors going into the state tournament, and Travion Maddox, Trenton Hickerson, and Giovanni Miles.
Yes, and while Troy, Canton, Holland, West Ottawa could be teams that make some noise in Class A, I think just in 30 seconds or less, we, because we've done this before and we're not round two, that we have to respect what the PSL has done this year. Detroit East, English Village, maybe Cass Tech.
Just hope they didn't beat themselves up too much, and took too much of these teams didn't take too much of a beating in their league play that it hurts them in the tournament.
That's a fair point.
But one of those two teams, if they get out, could be very dangerous.
I don't think anybody wants to see. There are a ton of teams that don't want to be seen. And to be honest, there are only going to be 4 teams, obviously, in the semifinals. But I think that there are 12 teams, at least 10, that are legitimate chances that really nobody should be surprised. I think the only surprise will be if Clarkston doesn't get to the Breslin. As far as at least in the semifinals. And then for those other 3 spots, I mean, it's so far up in the air. And let's not forget, Clarkston still has to beat Carmen Ainsworth, who they did beat at the beginning of the year. And Carmen Ainsworth has pretty much been in the Super 10 or top 10 team the entire year.
That was a close game, too.
So let's move over to Class B. I know that New Haven, River Rouge, Benton Harbor, Detroit Henry Ford, Godwin Heights, who's been playing crazy, Grand Rapids Catholic Central, got to throw them in the mix.
Don't forget about my Hornets from Williamston. We got a big feature coming out on StateChampsNetwork.com that will be posted probably by the end of the week on the Williamston Hornets, and really coming into their own as a program these last 3 years.
Boys and girls. And, obviously Detroit Country Day is a team that's been playing, can knock some teams off.
It's
boys
funny
and
looking
girls.
at Detroit Country Day as a sleeper.
Yeah, I know, it is.
Always been that Goliath.
Big thing for Country Day is they got Colin Demmons, their football star, who did not play basketball the first part of the season. He was their leading scorer last year. Decided to come out halfway through the year. And is playing really well. He's 6'2", 6'3", he can hit the open jump shot, get out in transition and rebound.
I was surprised to see, but I'm glad. He said, "Forget this, man. I'm not giving."
Well, he opened up his recruiting. He's kind of deciding now. He had committed to UCLA. Now he's trying to figure out where he's going to play in college. But obviously wanting to enjoy his last couple months with his boys on the basketball court.
And then TJ obviously was talking up Bridgeport.
Yeah, and Bridgeport.
Bridgeport
has been tough. They just beat Hamady. They beat Frankenmuth twice this year. They're probably going to have to play Frankenmuth again sometime in the playoffs. I think it might be the regionals. But
who's B? Where are we at with B right now?
I think with B, you've got my Final Four is Benton Harbor, Ford, New Haven, and Godwin Heights. I think the Ford winds up winning it. I think that their guard play. I think that Ken Flowers is one of the more underrated coaches
For sure.
And Anthony Roberts is one of the most underrated players in the state.
Yeah.
He just reopened his recruitment when he was committed to Bryant.
Right.
And Bryant's head coach retired after two plus decades.
Yep.
And Roberts is back on the market, and that is a steal for whoever picks him up.
And his recruitment is really picking up as far as like a lot of MAC and Horizon schools. I know Dayton was just in to see him play, so he'll definitely have the opportunity to play at. Let's say this, nothing against Bryant, but he's going to have an opportunity to play, at
Bryant is Division I. They're just low level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Tim O'Shea was the coach there.
What's really interesting with Henry Ford is they've got a tough, I wouldn't say tough, but a very intriguing district. They play Mumford, and then they also have Old Redford in that district. And Old Redford's a team that can score with just about anyone.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm not necessarily picking them to beat them because I don't think they'll win, but they could throw a wrench into Henry Ford's plans in a hurry.
Yep.
And they should. And if you're Redford, you should have the expectation to get to Breslin Center,
without a doubt.
You got Rocket Watson, Isaiah Jackson.
They almost beat Hazel
Covington
Park
on the bench.
They almost beat Hazel Park on Saturday. Like it was a really, really good game. And the other thing is, I think that the tempo was good for Old Redford. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that Hazel Park, Henry Ford isn't going to. They're not going to look to get up and down the court like a Hazel Park. And so Old Redford, they've got to figure out how they're going to score in the half court.
And Coach Flowers is going to want to dictate that pace too. And you don't think for a second that if Henry Ford starts trying to make it a track meet with Old Redford, that Ken Flowers is going to call timeout and calm it back down, get back into their system. When it comes to March, there are a few basketball coaches I want more than Ken Flowers.
So, but then there's the three-headed monster we were always talking about was New Haven, Rouge, and Benton Harbor.
Yes, and Ford would play Rouge in the regional, I believe.
And Rouge is the defending champ.
Yep.
And they got Romeo Weems, who might be the best overall player in the state. When it's all said and done 5 years from now.
Yep.
And they had that loss to Southfield Christian, so they got to come back down to earth.
Yep. Yeah. So Catholic Central, I just think that they're going to rely on guard play. And they're going to play Godwin Heights in the regional.
Yep.
But I think that those. I think that if with Rouge, Benton Harbor, and Godwin are my three locks, if I really had to go out there and pick one or the other, I think that Ford is really rolling in what they're doing. But Rouge is, let's say this, I think that one of those five teams.
I'll tell you one thing about Godwin Heights. They got the dynamic duo in Lamar Norman and Marquise Hastings, and Lamar Norman is a kid who is the definition of tough as nails on the floor. He just got kind of snubbed in Mr. Basketball, didn't get named as a top 5. He's got something to prove, and when he plays like he always does with something to prove, watch out. So he's gonna be extra motivated. In this
but like you said too, it's also what wins in playoffs are guard play, but it's also stars.
Yep.
And that Marcus Bingham is one who can take over a game, beat you outside, definitely beat you inside.
Yeah.
And if he feels that if he plays a perfect game, and lifts his teammates.
I would guess if you had to ask Norman, and we're kind of getting off on the weeds with Mr. Basketball, I know. But I think he would probably say he should be in on there over Trey Williams as opposed to over Marcus Bingham.
Lamar thinks he should be in there with Foster.
Right.
I'm not like I know Lamar. I know the Godwin Dunk City family.
Dunk City, baby.
All right. Well, let's jump over to Class C. Flint Beecher, Detroit Edison, St. Mary Catholic Central, Pershing, of course, now in Class C. Some teams that are going to be hovering around: Grand Rapids, Covenant Christian, and Langsburg, Flint Hamady. Those are some teams
about star
on the
power
fringes, right?
And DEPSA right now. They've got 3 Division I bound players, and Gary Solomon, P.J. Mitchell, and Spider
U-D
Jesuit
Johnson this week. So
PJ's playing PJ's playing really well. Played really well in the state champion. In the city championship game.
They're definitely coming in on fire.
They got size in Spider Johnson, length in Spider Johnson, and then they got outstanding guard play, which again is a huge factor come state tournament time, and Solomon and P.J. Mitchell.
And go ahead.
Lorne mentioned it earlier when we were talking Class A. When you look at Class A, Class B, Class C, and I think if you ask any team that isn't in the PSL, who's the last team you want to see, it's going to be a PSL team.
Right.
And I think
we haven't had a time where we could have said that in the last couple of years.
Right. And then I think in Class C this year, if you're asking Monroe St. Mary Catholic Central or a Covenant Christian or a North Point Christian or whoever it might be, who's the last team you want to see? It's either Edison or Pershing.
Right.
I think that just speaks to how good these two teams are and how dangerous they are
and
in this tournament.
When would Edison and Pershing square off?
They would play in the regional semifinal.
Yeah. Regional semi.
Yeah. So that, and then you also got Loyola that'll probably make that in the other part of that.
And they got Myron Gardner.
Yep.
they're doing a good. I think that they might be a year away. They might be that team that we're talking about in 2019.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are so many tough teams. Beecher still has to get by Hamady in the district.
And Hamady 2 years ago lost in heartbreaking fashion to Beecher in the districts, and now you got Hamady. I think they came close last year. Maybe this is the year that Hamady finally gets Beecher. Beecher's a little bit down. There's no Malik Ellison.
Young.
Yeah, they're young. And I mean, this is going to be a team, don't get me wrong, I think Beecher's going to make a run. If it's not this year, then it'll be next year. But maybe this is the year that Hamady finally catches Beecher and knocks him off.
Yeah. Another couple of districts that I'm looking at right here, Langsburg and Dansville. They played each other a couple of times this season already. Langsburg's got the better of them. Again, we've talked about it in the past. It's tough to beat teams 3 times in a season. Also, another district, you got Calvin Christian and Covenant Christian, who have pretty much been in the top 10 pretty much the entire season. And the other thing is both of those teams have both been in the semifinals the last 2 years. So I think whoever wins that game could easily wind up making that trip to the Breslin in the semifinal.
Right. It's funny, over in Class D, and when
that was on purpose.
Jeff types up the notes about favorites. He's got Southfield Christian, Southfield Christian, and then Buckley.
Yeah, or Frankfort.
Right. We got some dark horses. Tri-Unity Christian, Frankfort, Hillman. But
what about Dollar Bay?
If they make it,
no, I'm looking at a semifinal between Dollar Bay and
Southfield
Christian.
Dollar Bay.
I might be the only person ever.
Florida-like.
I got to be old school. I'm never cheering or anything like that.
Right.
And I've seen it happen and stuff like that. It drives me nuts. I might have to rock a Dollar Bay shirt. At least, or let's say the winner lose. I'd like to at least be in the press.
It's a money program,
right? You hear that
the money program?
If Dollar Bay makes it there, TJ's required to come in for our recap segment and wear the Dollar Bay T-shirt.
Dollar Bay,
or just wear it at the Breslin. You should be rocking your Dollar Bay.
Yeah, right on media row.
I got to find out what their colors are. Get matching pants.
All joking aside, I think it's just time that Southfield Christian's going to take back that crown.
Who's going to be their toughest matchup, you think, through this run? Just from what you could look at the brackets and how you think it's going to shake out.
Buckley, I think.
And that will be where?
I believe
they would play in the finals.
Finals,
yeah.
Denver Cade.
Denver Cade.
Yeah. Buckley was there last year. They lost to Powers North Central.
Denver Cade played really well in that loss.
Yeah, he did, because there were a couple of times where North Central got up by 20 and Denver Cade kind of made it down to 12, and there was just too much Powers North Central last year. But I think Buckley, the only team that has I guess somewhat equal experience to Southfield Christian is Buckley. There's
Frankfort's kind of in there as well.
I'm saying the state finals experience, being at the Breslin, not being fazed by those bright lights. That's why I think Buckley's, they're big across the board. They're not 6'10", but they're like 6'5", 6'6", up front. I think that's going to be a little bit of a problem, but not nearly.
And Southfield Christian, just so maybe to give a little history lesson to people that just kind of came on the scene.
Yeah.
They won 3 straight in Class D.
Yep.
Then for a couple years they went into Class C, came back to D last year, lost in an all-time classic to North Powers Central in overtime or
double overtime
in the state semis on a crazy buzzer beater.
That's probably the best high school game I've ever seen.
And like I said, I think they're going to take back that crown and possibly hold it again for a extended period of time like they did when they won those 3 straight earlier this decade.
And they're still young. I mean, they've got next year. I mean, they do graduate Bryce Washington and a couple of other guys.
They got Harlan Beverly coming back, one of the top 5 players in the junior class. Caleb Hunter, Bubba Humphrey, DeJohn Humphrey.
But what's crazy about if any team, whether it's a Clarkston or a Henry Ford or anywhere down the Class A through Class D, if you had to say, we have to replace Brock Washington, Bryce Washington. I'm sorry,
yep.
Bryce replaced Brock.
Right. But if you say that anywhere else, you sit there and go, oh, wow, that's a huge hole to fill. But for Southfield Christians, next man up.
Yeah, we got it.
Right. It's crazy just to think the depth of that program being a class.
And Caleb Hunter gets totally overlooked.
Yeah, he does.
His brothers got a lot of hype when they were in that program. But Caleb, to his credit, is a guy that doesn't grab for the spotlight. He's okay with only taking 5 to 10 shots a game. He doesn't need 20 shots a night.
And he's
the point. And he's the point guard.
Where's Caleb going?
He's only a junior. Just a junior.
Yeah. I didn't know if he had.
Yeah. His two brothers were as far away from point guard as possible.
Yeah.
The second they got the ball in their hands, they were chucking it up. Caleb is more of a distributor, more of a overall playmaker on the floor. And
like his daddy.
And he can shoot it too. He can shoot it. I mean, don't leave him open.
Yeah. Showed that against Rouge. Caleb Hunter is also one of the few players that you look, when I saw him play as a sophomore, I believe, I looked at him and thought he was like a college junior, something like that. He looks far older than he actually is. But yeah, he's a guy who may have been that X factor against Rouge, a couple of weeks ago, knocking down those open shots. And that's going to be the case in the tournament. Whoever they play, they're going to focus a lot on Harlan Beverly, and rightfully so, and a lot on Bryce Washington, and rightfully so. And he's going to have to make those open shots when they come.
You can only double team so many guys,
right?
And it's almost like pick your poison, and you can't play everybody man up because Harlan Beverly is a tough matchup one-on-one against anybody in the state. Bryce Washington off the wing is same way.
Beverly rediscovered his mojo. I kind of called him, both TJ and I kind of called him out after that West Bloomfield game where he just did not look present. And ever since that game, he's been going gangbusters.
He's going to be up on that podium
and not just hitting it from the outside, taking it to the rack, showing everyone his athleticism, showing that he can crash the boards, he can get out in transition, he can hit the open three-pointer or beach on the mid-range game.
Yep.
He's a very special player, and there's a reason that he's got so many major college programs coming after him.
Right.
Well, as we go to our first break, what's the best high school basketball game you've ever seen?
I saw back in, I want to say it was 97 or 98, I saw a regional final between Catholic Central and Detroit Cass Tech that I believe went double overtime, and there was a half-court shot, and it was a packed gym. That comes to mind. Clarkston, Dane Fife Clarkston versus Mike Chappelle, Southfield Lathrop in the 96 quarterfinals, I believe. Chappelle hit a buzzer beater. That was a great game in front of a packed Ferndale crowd.
Yeah, I've seen a whole bunch of them. I think let's just go one of the early ones. I'm going to go with Southfield Lathrop as well. There's a guy, Wade Crawford, who wound up hitting a three-pointer against Birmingham Brother Rice and Paul Grant. Yeah, and that was I think in the district early 92. And so I just remember going and I was mobbing up on Paul Grant with about 150 other Southfield Lathrop fans.
But that game, that semifinal game last year, goes down into the annals of the MHSAA record book, or for sure. History books is just the barn burner of all barn burners.
One of the most fun I remember was when I was new covering high school here in Michigan. Is I think it was 2002. It was when Detroit Rogers, Steve Hall, Rogers, Eric Evans hit that shot because it was so improbable, and it was a back and forth game.
The storyline of that,
and not
team.
only that, it was not just that basket that Eric Evans made, falling out of bounds, made that basket, but then one of the other players had to make free throws in order to send it to, I don't know if it went into overtime. I think it went into overtime, and then they won it. So there was all kinds of storylines to that. It was phenomenal.
Right.
And that's, and for Class D basketball, it was like really just, on the big stage, that was really cool.
That's what it's supposed to be.
And there was I can definitely say either one of the PSL finals that I've seen, and I can't name which one, but I've seen some great ones either at Cobo or at Callahan, and also some quarterfinals at Callahan Hall have just over the past 10 years have been like some that Romulus had played in that couldn't get out of, and some of were just tremendous.
There was a state finals with Johnny Jones. Do you remember that state finals?
Yeah, when he got called for the 5-second call
that was
against Arthur Hill.
One other game that stands out to me is Class A quarterfinal 4 years ago, Cassius Winston versus Foster Lawyer.
Oh yeah, the buzzer. And I said,
I
turned
the runner.
Tim McCormick before that game, the former NBA center, broadcaster, Clarkston alum, asked me before the game. He's like, is Clarkston going to win this thing? I said the only way Clarkston doesn't win this game is if Cassius goes off for 35 points.
And what did he do?
And his game-winning bucket at the buzzer was his 35th point.
Nice.
And I turned to Tim after the game. I was like, "I'm sorry. There was 99 out of 100 times you're going to win this game.
That was your win.
The prognosticator.
Unless Cassius Winston comes up with the effort that he came up with in that game.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. All right, we're going to take a timeout. When we come back, Dan Young is going to join me. We're going to talk about the Miss Basketball Finalists, and then these guys are going to go back and we're kind of break down the Mr. Basketball Finalists that just were announced just today on Wednesday. So stick around with this. The podcast Hang Time. We'll be right back.
Fundraising should be fresh, flavorful, and simple. We have the perfect solution at Hungry Howie's. Dough Raiser. Your team or school can sell paper pizza certificates that can be redeemed for one medium pizza at participating locations.
We've been doing this fundraiser for about 4 years, and it's the easiest and best and most profitable fundraiser they have in Michigan.
Go to doughraiser.com to learn more and sign up. Your next fundraiser comes with flavored crust. Welcome to Hungry Howie's Dough Raiser.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Hang Time. This is our BCAM portion of the podcast. Dan Young joining me here, and we had big news last week. Of course, everybody was anxiously awaiting to find out who was going to be named to the Miss Basketball final ballot. We got the 4 names, and these are 4 young ladies who are well-deserving.
Absolutely. Camry Clegg, we've been talking about her all year, Wayne Memorial. Laisha Petrie from Arbor Prep, Jada Hampton from East Lansing, and Kayla Webb from Country Day. You had the 2 girls that got injured this year that didn't make it. That was a tough thing to deal with. We still feel for the girls that got injured, but we got a great four in the group.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Is there a commonality, you think, between these 4 players? I would say one thing I think about athleticism.
Athleticism and playmakers.
Playmakers.
People that can make plays when things break down.
Yeah.
You run a play, you try to get a shot, you don't get that shot because the defense takes it away, and these 4 players can then put the ball on the floor or get after it and create space to get a shot, and all are willing passers.
So this podcast airs on Thursdays. We're actually filming this on Monday and recording it on Monday. But as of right now, voting is continuing.
Right.
So this will be Thursday night when this airs. So voting will end Friday.
Friday.
Okay. And so what's the timetable then from then on out?
Then the presentation will be in conjunction with United Dairy of Michigan, a new sponsor of us. Really excited to be working with them. We will put on the presentation at the Detroit Free Press building on Friday, March 9th. So
this award has a new honoree connected to it, correct?
Mick McCabe has been named the new it's going to be called the Mick McCabe Miss Basketball Award. And the reason is that he has been so instrumental in not only basketball, but girls athletics at the high school ranks for many, many years, giving them the amount of coverage that the boys get. And my wife was an 83 graduate, played in the Michigan High School All-Star Game. I mean, he was covering them in the 80s, in the early 80s. And so that means a lot to a lot of females, players and coaches, that Mick has been in their corner and putting them right up there with the boys. And so it's an honor that is well-deserved.
Yeah, no doubt, like our own Tom Markowski, Mick McCabe, Tom Markowski, those are the upper echelons,
exactly.
When it comes to high school sports coverage and all-inclusive sports
coverage.
They're the
legends.
And definitely what Mick, was always, whether it was basketball or softball, whatever, he'd always give a lot of attention to that.
Absolutely.
And really build it up and tell good stories. And so that's a great thing.
Yep.
We had an opportunity on State Champs to cover the Wayne Memorial Howell KLAA championship. And
2 great teams.
2 great teams. 2 teams that had never played before.
Right.
Which I was, surprised to learn.
Those leagues have combined
yeah,
over the years.
Yeah, but you just figure at some point
right.
over their history they
Right.
would have met. But regardless of that, Camry Clegg really, after being announced the day, that day that she was a finalist that Thursday night, to come out on the floor and score 38 or 30, I think it was 31. Anyway, I know only any of her other teammates only scored 4 points or less. So she was the bulk of the scoring and just clutch shooting. I think she is really playing fantastic. Had a chance to see Kayla Webb against Saginaw Heritage, who was very, very good. So they limited her to maybe what she could normally do. But we know what Country Day does and her leadership and what they did last year and the fact they're going for another state championship. She's the architect of that, of their offense. And I haven't seen
Laisha Petrie.
Yeah, I've seen her. I've seen her, of course, on State Champs, but I haven't seen her in person. And the same goes
Jada Hampton.
With Jada. Yeah.
Yeah. So Camry Clegg's going to Clemson. She's unbelievable. She recognizes situations so quickly. You go zone, before you even make the first pass, she can recognize. She's very smart. She's quick. She can score shooting the ball. She's a great passer. She's very strong defensively. You talk about Laisha Petrie. Has always been a scorer from day one in high school when she walked down the court as a freshman. But she's really becoming more of an all-around player. She's going to be going to Bradley. And she's a lanky perimeter scorer who's now getting the assists up and finding the open player and becoming a very good defender as well as what we talked to her, hearing from her coaches. Jada Hampton's 5'11", but she's plays both inside and out, and they have a great team. I don't know if they've lost a game.
I don't think so.
I think they're undefeated. She is going to Wichita State. Outstanding, the Shockers, the House of Shock.
That's right.
And she's went from a 36% free throw shooter to 76%, and she shoots 46 from the three at 5'11".
Phenomenal.
So, and then Kayla Webb could be a big time scorer, but has to be a distributing playmaker. But is an 1,000-point scorer at Country Day as well, so that's no slouch.
No doubt about it. And, I know it's going to be very difficult. And, I like the way that, it's, it tends – we always – the one question that we always have is like, oh, man, look, these are all Southeast Michigan, so these are going to split the vote and, share. But that's not necessarily always the case. I think the coaches have had a chance, hopefully to see their tape if they're in other parts of the state.
Yeah, with technology – each player has a highlight film from their camp that is on our website. So when the coaches go to vote, they will click on that, watch their highlight, and if they haven't seen them live, you get a pretty good feel for what these four are all about, and they're all really good.
Absolutely. All right, well, Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who's going to win? I'm kidding. Dan cannot give his opinion.
Thank you very much.
Of course, I just got to throw it out there. Just say, yeah, exactly. No, it is a great field. And what about Mr. Basketball? When will those nominees come out?
Mr. Basketball's nominees will be coming out. They will be finding out later this week into the weekend. Mm-hmm. And then voting will begin next week. And their presentation with United Dairy of Michigan will be on March 19th. So we do have some time.
All right. Well, girls basketball playoffs are underway. Boys basketball get going next week. So this is a great time of year. Enjoy it out there, Hoops fans, and we'll talk to Dan next week.
Great. Thanks.
Welcome to Be the Referee with Michigan High School Athletic Association Assistant Director Mark Ewell.
In just about every single basketball game that's played during the season, a player will hustle and dive for a loose ball that's on the floor. As that player dives and tries to gain possession of the ball on the floor, yells from every corner of the gym come screaming for a call of traveling. This is one of the more misunderstood situations under basketball rules. Once that player dives for the loose ball on the floor and gains possession, there are two ways in which they're guilty of a traveling violation. The first is if the player takes the ball and attempts to stand up, or the second, the player rolls over from their back to the front or front to back. Other than that, that's a legal play and the ball remains in play.
Thanks, Mark. You can be a referee. Go to MHSAA.com now to register. Thanks for listening. I'm John Johnson.
Welcome back to Hang Time. I want to thank Dan Young for his participation, and obviously the Miss Basketball Final Four are four impressive ladies. I know the way that Camry Clegg has been playing has been lights out.
She had 31 in the KLA final.
Yeah, and I think one of her teammates not one of them scored more than 4 points. Yeah. It was her, 31 and just clutch.
My favorite part about Camry Clegg's game, and I've said this over and over, she plays with so much swagger that you don't usually see in girls basketball. That
reminds you of Aerial Powers.
Yes, yeah.
The last one that played with that kind of moxie.
That is a great,
and
she's in the WNBA right now.
Yeah,
right. And obviously, Laisha Petrie getting in for Upsilon Prep was good. Her being at the Breslin Center, what was a couple years ago when they won it.
Yeah, she's going to Bradley, and then Kayla Webb was going to Providence, the point guard for Country Day, who's won 2
and
state
East Lansing, they just don't lose.
Right.
And Jada,
and so Jada's been obviously fantastic.
Going to Wichita State.
It's good to see Lasha Petrie in the Miss Basketball Award race, and I was thinking about this earlier. when Arbor Prep first on the scene, we kind of assumed, Arbor Prep is here for a year or two, and they'll just go away like most schools do. And her Miss Basketball nomination just kind of speaks to the lasting power that Arbor Prep is proving to have under Coach Wells, and I think it's good to see.
Validates her career and what she's helped build that. And
also speaks to the kind of the building paradigm. I mean, take this for how you want to take it. I mean, that was an AAU basketball program that became a high school.
That's one way to put it. I mean,
right.
But I think
so. They had some cohesion.
Some cohesion.
But it's good to see that Arbor Prep is starting to get the necessary recognition that they've kind of lacked the last couple of years.
Your thoughts on who's going to win it?
I said Hampton last week. I'm staying with Hampton. Even though I love what Kayla Webb does, I think when we're talking about the
voters, you got to think about voters.
You got a country day bias, and you're going to hurt Kayla Webb, and it's going to help Jada Hampton.
Yeah, you have the Southeast Michigan players kind of probably taking votes away from one another. I think Jada Hampton's going to end up winning this, and rightfully so. She's a fantastic player. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But yeah, I kind of lean towards what Scott was saying. The vote's going to probably lean in Jada Hampton's favor.
Yep, Jada Hampton.
There you go. All right, let's go to our. There's a lot of thought behind that, TJ. Let's go.
He's a boys' basketball guy. He never said he was a girls' basketball guru.
Listening skills.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's get quickly before we get to our Mr. Basketball thoughts on the finalists in that category. Let's kind of just quickly give your picks for A, B, C, and D as the boys' basketball tournament is getting set to go. This is always fun to do it before the tournament, and then we'll kind of match notes and see how you guys did. So, who wants to start? We'll start with TJ.
Sure.
Give me your winners in A, B, C, and D.
I'm going with Clarkston. I think they're going to beat Hazel Park in the semifinal, and then the other side of the bracket, I've got West Ottawa, and I think that they are going to fall to Skyline, and so we will get number 1 and number 2, Clarkston versus Skyline.
Nice.
Tons of great guard play, and I think that Clarkston is going to wind up coming up on top there.
Yeah.
I look forward to that.
Class A for me, I agree, Clarkston, and I have them being West Ottawa.
In the finals.
Yep.
Clarkston over Skyline. We're getting the matchup we want to get, and it's going to be a great one. Foster Lawyer versus Brandon Wade, Taylor Curry versus Munson, and so it will be exciting.
Yeah, you got Robinson and you got Ammerman. I mean, there are a ton of
C.J. Robinson matching up against Jack Ammerman.
Yeah, not only that, I think that the both teams are hungry. I think obviously Foster and Clarkston, they want to go out there and they want to prove.
And they have not played this year.
And they have not played this year. They've played a lot of the same teams. But
sure.
They have not
and
played.
Foster, obviously last year you saw this, playing on his future college court is something that inspires him.
Yeah,
and he had 2 great games in the Final Four last year, and I expect the same when they get back to Breslin this year. That he's just gonna he's gonna get loose and get nice really quickly, tickling some twine.
Tickling some twine.
All right.
Let's hope he doesn't. That sounds a little wrong there. But, okay, I got you. It makes sense. All right, let's go to Class B.
I've got Ford winning it all. I think that they beat Benton Harbor in the semifinal. And then the other half of the bracket, I've got New Haven beating Godwin Heights.
You've got Ford beating Benton Harbor in the semifinal.
In the semifinal.
And who would they play in the final?
In the final, they would play New Haven, and New Haven would get by Godwin to get to the finals in that semifinal.
And you like Ford.
And I like Ford. I think that
be a good game. I like to see
Ford. I think that Flowers
New
just
Haven
does a great job of getting everything out of what his players are. And I think that again, Anthony Roberts.
Is that a rematch from last year? Who did?
No. Ford didn't make it.
No. Ford was 2 years ago.
Yep.
It was Rouge last year.
Yes.
Got it. My bad.
But I think that Anthony Roberts can play with anybody in the state. I think that there's some other guys. They do have a little bit of height. They play defense. They've got some guys that can make some jumpers. And I think that Anthony Roberts is really going to be one of those guys. People are going to say, "Who's that guy?"
Right.
I'm going to go with Ford too. And I mean, Roberts is the consistency there, is the known entity. So I have no question what I'm going to get from him. But I think the X factor for this run for Henry Ford will be the 2-guard, DeAndre Ulmer, I believe his name is, or Deontay Ulmer.
Deontay Ulmer.
And he is just, he's a sniper. We were talking about snipers earlier in the broadcast when we were talking about Zach Winston at Jesuit. And, he complements Anthony Roberts very well. And Anthony Roberts he can shoot it himself. But when you have a backcourt like that, fire and ice,
Marbury as well is another guy.
Thunder
you
and
think
lightning.
They'll take on New Haven?
I think that.
You think it'll be New Haven and Ford?
Yeah, I think they'll take out Romeo Weems and company, and not having Eric Williams in the arsenal for New Haven will spell doom for them.
Right. I have
and just so people know, Eric Williams was a senior last year. Is having a great year right now in the Atlantic 10 at Duquesne.
In the Final Four. I have New Haven over Godwin and Henry Ford over Williamston, and then I have New Haven beating Henry Ford.
So we all got the same. You got the same matchup.
Yep.
You just got New Haven.
Yeah.
Williamson's
another one of those teams where
they're tricky, and they're sound. They're sound fundamentally. They've got enough scores. They've got enough defense, some rebounding.
Got a great point guard in Cliver.
Yep,
we talking
absolutely.
about Williamson here?
Yeah,
for my feature, Cody Cliver and Joe Hannenberg are really nice. Sean Cobb, a junior that's been battling injury these last couple weeks. He's supposed to get healthy come tournament time, and when you put that all together, that's a recipe for success.
So Scott's talking about a feature he's writing on Williams. Is that out now?
It's a feature that will be posted by the end of the week.
Okay, so by Friday, you'll be able to read that at statechampsnetwork.com. He's talking about Williamston. So let's go to Class C.
Whew. I think it comes down to what we were just talking about with Pershing and DEPSA. I think that they're so much more battle-tested than a lot of other teams, and they have the
and they
seniors.
would meet in the finals.
No, they would.
Oh,
it's going to be one of those. One of those two.
Okay.
But I think that they have more experience, and I think that either one of those teams is going to wind up beating Beecher. And I'm not picking Pershing or I'm picking DEPSA, but I think it's going to be one of those two teams.
Right.
I think that I'm going to look at teams like Langensburg. I like what Langensburg's done. Dansville's a tough team. That league that they're in is pretty good because you've also got Fowler, who's been a top team in Class D for in that same district, in that same conference. But I think that DEPSA or Pershing is going to want to.
All right, no wavering. Who's in the finals and who wins?
You know
Call
what?
it out.
Let's say this. I'm not saying that anybody was playing possum in the city championship, but I think that Pershing that they can beat DEPSA. And I would not be surprised at all if Pershing is the winner. And it's so hard for me. If I was going to say 95% Pershing, then the other 5% would be DEPSA. But DEPSA just came out and was so dominant when they played, and so I'm still flipping coins in my head. I think that St. Mary's. Let's say this in the lower bracket. I think it's going to be St. Mary's, Catholic Central, and then I'm going to go out there. I think the McBain's those two are going to wind up playing. I think that St. Mary's will wind up playing Pershing EPSA in the final. But yeah,
are you afraid that you're going to get some heat, man?
I'm not ready. I guess I wasn't even allowed to go back in Pershing for not having them in the top 25.
Right.
To start off the season. But yeah, you know what? I do like what Pershing brings to the table. I think that they will wind up being on the state championship and beating Monroe St.
I'm going to be more
beating Monroe St. Mary Catholic Central in the final.
Yes,
I'm going to be more emphatic.
Okay,
I'm going to say I call DEPSA Eastern Market Academy.
Yes,
they're nestled there in the north wing of historic Eastern Market. Yeah. So I'm going to say Sapino's Pizza for everyone at DEPSA. Right. Yeah. They're going to be having a pizza party late March after they win at the Breslin Center. They're going to bring home. They're going to match what their counterparts on the girls' hardwood did last year. They're going to bring one home for the boys. And P.J. Mitchell, the point guard, Gary Solomon, the LIU Brooklyn-bound two-guard. P.J.'s committed to Central Michigan. Spider Johnson going off to Cleveland State. They're going to celebrate their last couple months or last couple weeks of playing high school basketball together in style, raising a banner, and
over SMCC.
Over C.J. Haught, Kegley, and Welch over at SMCC. I expect a very good game. I expect a game that goes down to the wire, possibly into overtime, and DEPSA's strength of schedule, gets them that.
They do have some Brazil experience from last year as well.
Yeah.
So
I have Pershing making it to the Final Four, and they're going to beat Covenant Christian.
He's welcome.
Narrowly.
He can walk right in. Deuce can walk right in. They're like, come on in, Jeff.
But I have Pershing losing to St. Mary Catholic Central.
I spoke too soon.
All right.
So you have Pershing against SMCC in the finals, but SMCC over top.
CJ Howe getting it done.
And Ron, you know what we were talking before about Lamar Norman kind of playing with a chip on his shoulder. Ron Hill, the point guard for everyone talks about DeJuan Seals. Ron Hill, the point guard for Pershing, got overlooked in the first couple all PSL teams.
Right. All three of them.
All three of them. And I saw some people on Twitter kind of scratching their heads at that. And Ron Hill is going to be coming out there gunning for all those naysayers out there, and he's a very, very nice compliment to DeJuan Seals.
So in Class D, we're going Frankfort, right?
Yeah.
Dollar Bay.
Dollar Bay.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Dollar Bay. What's that? Oh, man, Screaming Trees.
Right. So the only question is who's Southfield Christian going to play, and we think that's going to be Buckley.
Yep.
I have Southfield Christian beating Frankfort. I think that Frankfort winds up beating Tri-Unity to get to the final, and then Southfield Christian will beat the Dollar Bay.
Oh, beat Dollar Bay.
Yeah, Southfield
you've got
Christian
Dollar Bay
to get into the finals.
Oh, to get into the finals, and then playing Buckley in the finals.
Frankfort. Buckley and Frankfort, I think this will be the third. More than likely, they're going to play three times this year.
Right.
It's probably one of the better rivalries that a lot of teams, or that people don't talk about, in the state. And not only that whole group, you've got McBain, Manton, Glen Lake, like the Frankfort, Buckley. Those teams are battle tested, And I think that, hey, just meet me down at the Breslin. It'll save me a 5-hour trip.
Right. Well, and just look at what Powers North Central has done. Over the last several years. They were a force. It's funny, you see Class D, but those are some of the best games and best, the hardest working, the most grit.
Great crowds.
See. Yeah, great crowds. They love it, man. That's like, this is their everything. This is their 15 minutes.
Super Bowl.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
After that, they go work at the mill.
Right. Yeah. I'm
just kidding, you Pers, man. I love you. Not saying that you're all factory.
Yeah, well, there's trolls under the bridge over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the Burnstein.
That's what they call it.
The Burnstein lineage from the UP from Iron Mountain. They worked in they were miners.
Well, they. Yeah.
So that's my family. They weren't working in the mill. They were working in the mountain.
Right.
Working
in the mountain.
The copper mountain.
Mining the copper.
That's right.
And ice fishing in July.
Yep.
Right.
June.
Yes. Very true. Very true. All right. We're going to wrap it up as we I did want to ask one more thing before we since Southfield Christian is who they are. Who are they going to be next year?
I think that they're going to be right back where
Who do they got coming back?
They got Harlan Beverly, one of the top 2 or 3 juniors in the whole state.
Yep.
They got Caleb Hunter.
And
they got Dejon Humphrey.
Right.
They'll call Bubba. Bubba Humphrey, who's been kind of quiet this year as a sophomore, but I expect him to have a huge.
So this dynasty just continues.
Yeah, and I think that they're probably.
Do you think they'll move up? Do you think they'll move up?
No,
they have to stay
down for 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
3
I believe
years,
is the rule. They
so
go
this is only the second of 3, right?
Stay down for 3, I believe, is the rule.
Right, because last year they were back in D.
Yeah.
So this would be their second of at least 3.
Yeah. However, I would like to see them go into like a different. It would be great to see them step into the Catholic League or some other.
Yeah.
Even if they jumped in the same charter conference, school league with like a River Rouge, with the Old Redford, with the Chandler Park Academy,
right?
Where it kind of add Cornerstone and stuff like that, where it can add a little bit more. And then there are some teams where you do have mixtures of charter schools and public schools, and they put in a blend of private schools. I think we're all past that. Where you're
get them playing better competition during the regular season.
Yeah, and while they do have a pretty strong non-conference schedule,
right?
I don't, and not taking anything
give
away
the
from
other teams a chance to win a title. You know what I mean? Because it's not going to happen for a long time, right?
Plymouth Christian, Oakland Christian,
they've only lost one game in league play since Josh Baker got there. One game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
That's some Keith Guy Muskegon stuff right there.
Right.
All right, guys. Final thoughts. We're going to talk about the Mr. Basketball finalists, which just have been named: Foster Lawyer, Brandon Johns, Marcus Bingham, David DeJulius, Travion Williams. So, first question is that too many guys on the list, or is it not enough?
I like the number. I like the 5 numbers. Okay, if you needed to add a 6, you could add a 6. Mm-hmm. I don't like 3.
Right.
So I'm comfortable with 5.
Yeah.
I think that it kind of has got to vary from year to year. I think that this year, you could go with 7, 8 guys. Just because we've got 8 guys that are going to the Big Ten. Just out of this class, and then throw in guys like Lamar Norman, like Brandon Wade. He's on an undefeated team. He's going to Duquesne.
Right.
Could he have waited until later on in the year, and all of a sudden, a Big Ten team come along and say, "Hey, we need a point guard."
Sure.
While it might not be Michigan or Michigan State, it might be an Illinois, it might be a Penn State or something like that, where he also winds up going on that high major level. But I think that what they did with this year's 5, I have no complaints. I think that they're all well deserved. Should Gabe Brown be in there? I think that maybe if Belleville had a little bit better start out the gate, that maybe more people would have been paying attention. But I also think that other thing with Belleville is they have a lot of scoring, And so he doesn't need to put up that 25, that 30 points. He can go out there and score 17 or 18. And I think that's when Belleville is playing their best, when they have 4 or 5 guys in double figures.
I have a complaint.
Yes, you do. I know.
I just, again, all due respect to Trey Williams, who has a upside that resides on the moon.
Jamal Cain-esque.
But I don't know how in good conscience, if you're going to do 5 and you're not going to do 6, 7, or 8, how you could leave Wade and Norman off in favor of Trey Williams, who's doing what he's doing, which is impressive. The stats themselves, when you look at the stats, they're impressive. He's averaging it's like a Sega video game stat line. 35 points, 25 rebounds, 15 assists, 8 blocks every game. But he's doing it against nobody. Right. He's doing it against basically my mom and my grandma in a basketball jersey.
Yeah.
So, Wade's on an undefeated team.
Might be
in
a little
Class A.
Ain't that bad.
Lamar Norman, is doing it in one of the best programs on the West Side. And Williams is going to Purdue. He's a Big Ten. He's a Big Ten level player, and like I said, I think he could have a great college career. I just don't agree with keeping him on that list and leaving those 2 off.
I also think it's
fun.
Or
Bubba Brown or Gabe Bubba Brown.
I also think it's fun when you have 7 or 8 guys. Like I like to look at those, like the 1988 or 1987 and stuff like that, just because you get to go back and you're like, man, look at all those great players.
Yeah.
Steve Smith does not make that Final 5 cut.
5, yeah.
There are a whole bunch of guys. Lou Dawkins doesn't make that 5. Steve Hall, like names that we're familiar with. And it's fun to look back and, I kid with all those guys all the time. When I get to see them and stuff like that, it's even better because I get to take them back and I was like, I want to see what their competitiveness was when they were like 17 years old, And I'm saying, so do you feel like you got cut out of it, And all of a sudden I'm opening up old wounds, from like 30 years ago and they're just like, hey, TJ, get out of here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to defend Travion Williams real quick, just to this point, and I think to your point, he plays inferior competition.
Again, come on in, Jeff. You're welcome.
He plays at Henry Ford
Academy for Creative Studies.
Right.
School for Creative Studies.
Yeah.
Okay. Not to be confused with Dearborn Henry Ford Academy
or Detroit Henry Ford Academy or Utica Ford.
Right. But his limited time against top competition, Rouge beat Henry Ford 69-42 in their first matchup of the year. Travion Williams at 27 and 14. I think against the superior competition, he kind of proved that he can do it. So that's kind
I'm not saying he can't do it.
Right. So that just to me, that's why I think he's.
I'm saying the stat line, which got him into the voting itself, is a little bit weighted against players that are playing tougher competition.
His numbers to me are closest to Maurice Taylor from Detroit Henry Ford. I remember, that same year you had Albert White, who just put up phenomenal numbers for Inkster. And this is what we're going back to 95 and something like that.
And Willie Mitchell.
Yeah, Willie Mitchell had crazy numbers. Robert Tractor Trailer had crazy numbers, but obviously they're playing in the PSL, and that's a little bit different than playing against Hamtramck.
All right, last call. Are you looking at battery levels on
I am
the camera?
looking at battery levels.
Exactly.
That's kind of that's been a theme today.
It's almost started to flash. So that means we're going to have to wrap it up quickly. Right. Do we see any scenario in which Foster Loyola does not win?
Yes. The scenario I see is you look at...
Because we're talking about votes here and voting.
Exactly.
But he did shine on the stage at the Breslin Center as a junior, which is always a good sign for votes.
I still believe he wins, but you also have to look at it, to Scott's point, there's no Lamar Norman, so that leaves one West Side player in the Mr. Basketball contest. Where last year you had...
In Marcus Bingham.
Yeah, where last year you had Xavier Tillman and Isaiah Livers, and Livers still ended up winning it with the West Side vote.
West Side is a powerful voting contingent.
It is. So I believe, with that being said, I still believe he wins it, but there is a possibility where Marcus Bingham
and that Brandon Johns contingent is going to be real strong.
We talked about it before.
He's the only one out there.
Yeah, it hurts John. We talked about this last week. It hurts Johns that he's East Lansing guy going to play in Ann Arbor.
I think the other thing is you need your coach to help you get votes. And now East Lansing's coach Steve Finnemore is not there.
Oh boy!
So I think that is huge.
Another ball of wax.
But if I'm going to talk about the only way that Foster loses is if he flips the bird, in his like next 2 games.
Throws a chair.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's got to go Bobby Knight or something like that. He's got to do something absolutely Latrell Sprewell.
Because for those who aren't familiar, the voting is going to happen soon.
Yeah,
next week
after the districts,
and it lasts for about a week.
Yeah, so he's got 4 games or 3 games depending on how much.
He checks every box.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
And every criteria, he kills it.
When it comes to who I would vote for, it'd be Foster Loyola. He's got a legitimate shot at being Clarkston's all-time leading scorer. in history, which is saying such an incredible
And the
amount.
thing I think I'll say that in the future, 10 years from now, when we look back and we look at the list, I think we're going to look back at the list and we're talking about how players are going to go moving forward. We're going to say, oh, David DeJulius was on that list.
Yeah. Right.
Wow, he didn't win?
Yeah, a really strong class. I mean, I remember people talking about Kay Felder, he wasn't there. I mean, Yante Maton, obviously, but, people talk about Kay Felder. I was like, I don't know if I think Martez Walker was probably the best player or the most noticeable team player off that Pershing team. And so
he's the one who went to the power conference.
He was Khalil back then.
Kay went to the Horizon League.
Yes. Yeah, and he actually just played downtown today for the Grand Rapids Drive at LCA, 11 a.m. game, $10.
Wow. I didn't even know that. They do not market that at all.
Yes.
I didn't even know they were here.
Got to be friends with Kay Felder Sr. on Facebook.
There you go.
But another point, to your point, Lorne, I think when we look back at this list, we'll look at the players that weren't on this list, and we'll see a Gabe Brown, and we'll see a Lamar Norman and Brandon Wade, and I think this
guys
is
maybe in the show.
Yeah, this is probably the deepest year of possible candidates for the Mr. Basketball Award. Taylor Curry. But it's going to be kind of too bad for some of those guys because it seems like the top three, I would say, are very, very obvious choices.
I like the 5. Like I said, we started this. I like the 5.
Yeah,
I don't like the 3. But I think if you got 8 guys that are deserving, you should have 8 spots.
I agree.
Put them on the ballot.
Yeah.
Got 6 last year.
Well, I'll say this: if Depsa would have won last year, or maybe one of these other teams that had one of the more Mr. Basketball candidates, if they would have done better last year, then they'd be able to expand to 6 or to 7.
Yep.
So it is what it is, but it's a great to be in a competitive state of mind.
Absolutely.
Or how about just a competitive Michigan?
Right, and we are all in a competitive state of mind as the playoffs get going here.
Yes.
We are all fired up. So by the time we convene next week, we will already have some key matchups have been played.
Yep.
Because they'll begin on Monday and Tuesday and go on, and we'll be able to kind of talk about where we are in terms of the playoffs. And we'll get
some girls hoops in the mix next week.
Yeah, we'll get some girls hoops in the mix
because
they'll be going into the regionals. So absolutely, and of course, if there's some upsets, then it may just throw this whole balance of power thing out of time. We probably won't know that by this time next week, but the following week, as we get into regionals, things will shake out. We'll see. We'll see kind of how the predictions have done. So of course, you can reach out to us on Twitter. You can ask your questions. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can. Comment on YouTube, and we'll have a question or something we could talk about bringing up. And one of these days we will have to take one of these shows on the road and do it out in front of the fans so they can weigh in before we're finished. And I think we already lost one camera. One camera down. One to go. All right, so that's it. So we're gonna end the podcast. We'll see you next week right here on HangTime.